Man, the files just keep getting crazier and crazier, to the point where people can't even believe that the files are real. Part 1 was about the cloning operation. Part 2 was the inner circle. Part 3 goes even deeper. While the media is still trying to pick up the pieces and get people to look in other directions, real researchers are picking apart the files and putting it all together. Now, a vivid picture is beginning to emerge. What you're about to see may shock you, but it is crucial for us as the human race to understand. It would seem that the elites are experimenting with tech that they don't want us to know about because, well, they have certain plans for us. It all revolves around what we're going to be talking about today: immortality. I've now spent 2 weeks in 846,000 files, and what came out of it is a pipeline. 5 stages: map the mind, model the brain, preserve it, build a new body, then transfer. What you're about to see may seem like science fiction, but sometimes reality is stranger than fiction.
Do you see a path for Optimus to have consciousness downloaded to it?
You mean human consciousness, or?
Yes.
It's not like immediate, but if you said down the road, would you be able to, say, with the neural link, have a snapshot of, or at least an approximate snapshot of somebody's mind, and then upload that approximate snapshot to an Optimus body? I think that at some point that technology becomes possible, and it's probably less than 20 years. Now, of course, you won't quite be the same. Be a little different because you'll be in a robot body, and the mental snapshot will not be precise. It'll be probably pretty close, but not exactly the same. On the other hand, are you the same person that you were 5 years ago? Nope. I mean, a lot of things have changed. But I guess at some point, if you want to be uploaded to a robot body, my guess is that becomes possible.
That's Elon Musk talking about uploading a mind into a robot body. 20 years, he says. But the thing is, someone was already funding this research. Every single stage of it. The consciousness mapping, the brain scans, the preservation tech, the bodies, and the scientists doing this were all on Jeffrey Epstein's payroll. In this video, I'm going to walk you through 53 government-released documents. They lay out a 5-stage pipeline for doing exactly what Musk just described. The researchers had a name for it: cosmic consciousness. He literally had a brain scanner set up in the same Manhattan townhouse where Epstein was trafficking women. And one of the proposals included a line item for, and I'm quoting, sexy android bodies. Let's get started. Look at this email. This was sent by Jeffrey Epstein to Barnaby Marsh. It's a proposal, a research agenda, and it contains 2 items that have never been reported together. Item 1, build a mind reader using de-encryption, new understandings of the brain. Item 2, tissue regeneration, in parentheses, cloning. Hold up, because this is important. A device that can read a human mind, but that device is connected to a process that can clone a human body, all in one document? In part 1, we already discussed Gino Yu, Hong Kong Polytechnic University. He built a 5-stage model for rating how conscious a person is. Stage 1 through stage 5. Kinda like a video game, he mapped out the human soul on a spreadsheet. But what I didn't tell you in part 1 is how deep this actually goes. EFTA 0258131, Gino Yu writes to Epstein: when you offered me the 100K last year, my only request has been to support the Cuba conference when they asked for 25K. $100,000, that was Gino Yu's retainer, and his job wasn't just research, it was recruitment. Gino Yu brought Peter Fenwick to Epstein. He brought Dean Radin. And he brought Stuart Hameroff. He connected Epstein to Chinese parapsychology researchers. He found the people studying things that aren't supposed to exist. And then he set up shop. November 2016, Gino Yu writes to Epstein, "I picked up a Vive setup that I hope to install at your place. I will also have a custom EEG rig set up as well." A custom EEG rig? That's the device that reads your brainwaves. And he installed it alongside a virtual reality headset, an HTC Vive, in the small room off the library of Epstein's Manhattan townhouse. So follow me. Now Jeffrey Epstein has a room in his house where you put on a VR headset and he monitors your brainwaves. Keep in mind, this is the same house where he was supposedly trafficking women. And apparently he was scoring people. EFTA 026244641. Gino Yu writes to Epstein about a specific woman. In my model, she is a stage 3.5 or so. Then he lays out the full scale. Stage 1, consensus reality. Stage 2, all in one thing. Stage 3, surrendering to the bigger forces at work. Stage 4, intuition and insight. Stage 5, special abilities in a rounded way. Special abilities? That's where the scale ends? Gino Yu was rating real people on it, measuring how close they were to developing abilities that aren't supposed to exist. EFTA 025677715. And then he proposed a program to Epstein called Polystry for rehabilitating 80 stage 3 people who have gifts but cannot support themselves. 80 people in vulnerable altered psychological states who they claim to have gifts. So is this a recruitment pipeline for the psychologically fragile? And the consciousness research wasn't informal. It had a team, a budget, and a name. EFTA 024-60276. Peter Fenwick emails Epstein, and the subject? Cosmic consciousness. That's what they called it. Then Fenwick lays out the team to Epstein. Light study. Professor Fabio Babyloni for EEG and fMRI brain scanning. Dr. Ioannidis for data analysis in Cyprus. Professor Kevin Moore on autonomic nervous system measurements. And Professor Giuseppe Bersani funding the whole thing from his trust. All to be done at Rome Sapienza University. Then Fenwick writes again. Completed grant application. $441,100. Very good study with controls. Being done in an excellent unit. High quality. So it would seem this isn't a hobby. It looks like a funded scientific program with an international team studying what happens to the brain at the boundary of life and death. And Fenwick's specialty is near-death experiences. What happens to consciousness when the body dies? That's what Epstein was paying him to answer. Fenwick was just the beginning. Let me show you who else was on this roster. EFTA 02353378. Dr. Jeffrey Martin, a researcher at Stanford who scientifically maps enlightenment states. He calls it persistent non-symbolic experience, PNSE, a clinical term for what monks spend decades trying to achieve. Martin personally invited Epstein to his transformative technology conference. EFTA 016-12793. Dean Radin, Director of Research at the Institute of Noetic Sciences, Parapsychology, Telepathy, Precognition. Epstein's Skype logs show an incoming call from Dean Radin, 48 minutes and 32 seconds, April 2nd, 2018. A 48-minute phone call with a parapsychologist. Same day, and I mean the same day, as the holy shit spoon email about spoon bending experiments. EFTA 01771437. A program claiming a 73% success rate at engineering enlightenment states. Whoa, so we're not talking about meditation retreats or spiritual workshops. 73% transition rate. They were manufacturing consciousness states like a production line. But you ready to get even crazier? EFTA 025794443. After years of funding this research, years of paying Gino Yu, flying Fenwick around the world, hosting Raiden, scanning brains, Epstein writes this: I've seen no one with special abilities. Not one. Wait, what? Nobody had psychic powers? Nobody could bend spoons? Nobody could read minds? So he was testing this. But wait, he kept paying. So why would you keep funding a program that produces 0 results? Because Gino Yu told him it was working on someone specific. In the same email chain, after Epstein says, not one, Gino Yu responds, one of the ideas we have for research and application is to get people with special abilities that can also train and mentor from all around the world to support those that are coming into their own, like Masha. Masha Jerkova, the subject of Putin's Kiss, the documentary about Russia's youth propaganda movement. She's mentioned a lot in the archive, and it would seem that she was a test subject. Gino Yu said she was coming into her own, developing abilities, and the plan was to surround her with mentors who already had them. Nobody had proven abilities, but the program to develop them was still running. EFTA 02657514, February 2017. Gino Yu emails Epstein about Jeff Bezos. Authors gather at Jeff Bezos' super secret campfire event. I hear he gets people with special abilities at these events. Whoa, what? So Bezos had his own program? It's the same language, special abilities. And it's the same format, invite-only events with these hand-picked people. And Gino Yu is reporting this to Epstein like he's a scout, almost like he's his intelligence. Okay, but now let's talk about Chopra. Chopra sent Epstein everything. Aura measurement apps, biofield science papers, virtual reality meditation experiences. EFTA 01784162, August 2016. Chopra sends Epstein a Guardian article about meditation in virtual reality. Quote, it's like French philosophy meets the Matrix. So it would seem that Chopra was feeding Epstein the technology side of consciousness. And in return, Epstein gave Chopra access, dinners, island visits, conferences. And then there's this. Epstein asked Deepak Chopra, a consciousness researcher, whether anesthetics can affect consciousness and the mechanism. Chopra responds with the pharmacology, then asks, why do you ask? Why was Jeffrey Epstein asking a consciousness researcher about lethal anesthesia? I don't have the answer, but I have this document. Chopra and Epstein were building a research pipeline. EFTA 02393017. Chopra forwards Epstein a thread about savant syndrome and non-local mind from Daryl Treffert, the world's top savant researcher. 300 documented cases, and in this chain, Dr. Diane Hennessy Powell, a researcher who studies telepathy in autistic children, and Paul Mills from UCSD, who attended a Salk Institute conference on extraordinary variations of the human mind. Epstein's response, I'll fund the assistant, no help needed. So he funded a telepathy study on children with autism through Chopra's network. Yosha Bach, the AI researcher. He's almost in the file more than anyone else. If Gino Yu was the recruiter, Bach was the theorist. He's the man Epstein turned to when he wanted to understand what consciousness actually is, in mathematical terms. Bach developed a concept he called mobjects, mathematical objects that describe consciousness as computation. He proposed that the brain is a machine, and consciousness is the software running on it. So, the implication is, if consciousness is software, it can be copied. Over $1 million confirmed, $300,000 for a visa arrangement, $382,000 through the enhanced entity in 2016, $125,000 in 2018. Flights, housing, MIT salary supplements. Again, this wasn't a hobby. Epstein was Bach's primary patron. And let's not forget the whole secret society email with Bach's group. We talked about this in part 2, but now you have the context. Psychedelic retreats for select individuals? You may have thought it was the billionaires who wanted to take the psychedelics, but no, we're talking about physiological experiments, a private intelligence agency, a cryptographically secure social network, and then, direct quote from Michelle Riley, high-profile island you-know-what also independently come to mind, but I have a strong suspicion that you may already have that covered. Do you get it now? They knew. The inner circle was joking about it. Okay, but a theory isn't enough. You need a map of the actual hardware. EFTA 02375911. A meeting. Ed Boyden, MIT neuroscientist, inventor of expansion microscopy, the man building an atlas of brain computations. Next to him, Whitfield Diffie, the godfather of public key cryptography, and Martin Novak, evolutionary mathematician. Okay, so a brain mapper, a code breaker, and an evolution theorist in the same room at Epstein's request. Why would you need a cryptographer at a brain mapping meeting unless you're trying to decode something? Boyden, quote, a single neuron can flip the state of the whole brain, end quote. So one cell, one switch, and consciousness shifts entirely. EFTA 02357394, Boyden again. This time with Sebastian Sung and Neil Gershenfeld. So they're invited to Epstein's island, and the subject of the meeting? Deception. The world's top brain mappers on a private island discussing deception. Sebastian Sung wrote a book called Connect to Me. The thesis? You are your connect to me. Your identity, your memories, your personality, your consciousness is encoded in the wiring pattern of your neurons. Map every connection, and you've mapped the person. EFTA 01880316. And here's where it gets a little uncomfortable. The person who recommended Connect to Me to Epstein? Jean-Luc Brunel. The trafficking associate? The man later found dead in his Paris jail cell? He's the one who told Epstein to read the book about mapping human consciousness through neural wiring. A trafficker recommending a neuroscience book to a PDF. I'll let you sit with that. And this wasn't happening in a vacuum. Silicon Valley was in the room. EFTA 01789503. Reid Hoffman, LinkedIn founder, emails Epstein and Mark Zuckerberg together. Quote, Jeffrey, Zuck, email connections from the Ed Boyden dinner so that the combo can continue. Wait, so let me get this straight. Reid Hoffman introduced Mark Zuckerberg to Jeffrey Epstein. And the reason? A dinner about neuroscience hosted by Ed Boyden, the brain mapper. This wasn't just a billionaire party. This was a working meeting about the brain. And Hoffman wanted Zuckerberg and Epstein to keep talking about it. Take note about that for later. Same, Reid Hoffman. Same year. EFTA 01788970. The subject line, Skype about deception. So what's up with this deception stuff? Recipients, Hoffman, Joy Ito, Kevin Slavin, and Epstein? Hoffman responds, generally around this week and next. Interested. Reid Hoffman, Joy Ito from MIT Media Lab, and Jeffrey Epstein organizing a group call to discuss deception. That's a pattern. And then someone in Epstein's circle, text, very intrigued by Neuralink. Did like Chopra at the beginning, but have grown disappointed with him. AI fascinates me. So, Neuralink, Chopra, and AI, all in one message. The brain-computer interface, the consciousness researcher, and the machine intelligence. It all connects to Epstein. Stage 3 of the pipeline. Once you understand consciousness and you've modeled the brain, you need to preserve it, because eventually the body dies. Listen closely. There's a company called Nectome. Their technology is chemical brain preservation. They pump a solution through your brain that fixes every neural connection in place, permanently. The idea is that someday, someone could scan that preserved brain and extract the connectomy, the wiring diagram of who you were. And Jeffrey Epstein was tracking them. EFTA 02506384, March 2018. Epstein reaches out to Yosha Bach about brain preservation options. He wants to know what's the state of the art, what works, and what doesn't. EFTA 02470197. Bach meets Nectome's CEO, Robert McIntyre, and in person, and reports this back to Epstein. He sent Bach as a scout. Meet the CEO, evaluate the technology, report back. EFTA 02508072, and in the discussion about Nectome, someone writes, Sam Altman has signed up as far as I know. As always, chances that the current plan for restoring memory from connectomy works one day are quite close to nothing but absolute zero. Structure might be better preserved than in traditional cryo, but tissue gone. So, Sam Altman, the man who would go on to run OpenAI, signed up for brain preservation through Nectome? And this is being discussed in Epstein's documents alongside connectomy analysis in cryonics comparisons? But Nectome wasn't the only option. There was also Alcor. EFTA 02454349. Marvin Minsky, the father of artificial intelligence, MIT legend, had a cryonics contract with Alcor. His brain was to be preserved after death. And the man running Alcor? Max Moore. Here's a quote from the archive. Max Moore, CEO of Alcor, the leading cryonics firm, and before that, arguably the founding philosopher of transhumanism. Now, this detail has been reported before, but I want you to hear it in this context. The New York Times citing a source in the archive. Mr. Epstein told this person that he wanted his head and private parts to be frozen. His head, where the brain is, and his reproductive organs. The two things you need to preserve if your goal was to rebuild yourself. And in his personal notes, Epstein saves a reference to Frank Tipler's The Physics of Immortality, a book that argues physics allows for digital resurrection, that the laws of the universe permit bringing consciousness back from the dead. This obviously wasn't just casual reading. Alright, so map the mind, model the brain, preserve it after death. That's 3 stages. But a preserved brain in a jar doesn't do anything. You need somewhere to put it. Now let me show you what the body was for. If you saw part 1, you know George Church, Harvard geneticist, gene editing, CRISPR. But there's a detail from part 1 that becomes much darker now. EFTA 02546529, November 18th, 2011. George Church is corresponding about a cloning-related event. He's cautious. He knows the risk. And Epstein was getting cloning updates from Richard Merkin, CEO of Heritage Provider Network, and these were regular updates on cloning progress. In part 1, this looked like eugenics, like he wanted to breed a certain kind of human. Now, it looks like step 4 of the pipeline: build a compatible vessel. In part 2, we talked about David Hansen, the creator of Sophia, the world's most famous humanoid robot. Sophia. What I told you in part 2 is that Hansen is a member of the OTO, Aleister Crowley's occult order. A man building human-looking robots while belonging to a sex magic society. EFTA 02229729, Hansen Robotics. Direct Skype calls with Jeffrey Epstein. Multiple conversations. About what? Building humanoid bodies. But it doesn't stop there. EFTA 02725875. The proposal, we talked about this, Genie Lab. $3 million. And the pitch includes, and I need you to hear this, sexy android bodies. Sexy android bodies with mind uploading in a $3 million proposal connected to Epstein's network. A lab that would build attractive humanoid bodies and upload minds into them. And the scientists that would make it work were already in the network. Randall Conant. In the archive, he says, the leading serious scientific exponent of mind uploading. He runs Carbon Copies, the foundation for substrate-independent minds. The idea that a mind doesn't need a biological brain, it can run on anything. In the same document, Luke Nosek, PayPal Mafia, Peter Thiel's co-founder at Founders Fund, and Dmitry Itskov's 2045 initiative, premised on launching the singularity from Russia by 2045. These aren't just fringe characters, these are billionaires and venture capitalists funding the technological architecture for moving a mind from one body to another. But what's even crazier is, maybe you don't need a robot. Maybe you build a better biological body. EFTA 02003049. Epstein writes, evolution, luck, chance. Evolution's not growth. One needs mutation, change to function. Directed evolution. Directed evolution, not natural selection, not random chance, guided. Frances Arnold, Caltech, she won the Nobel Prize in 2018 for the directed evolution of enzymes. She offered to teach Epstein about breeding molecules in microbes. Epstein was interested, but not in microbes. EFTA 01785366. And then there's this line. Virtual womb for all those preemies we are breeding. Preemies we are breeding. Virtual wombs. He's telling you. This is the body side of the pipeline. Breed better humans, grow them in artificial wombs, direct the evolution, build the vessel. Part 1 was about genetics, but now you see why. The genetics weren't a separate project. They were stage 4. This is where it all connects, and this is the part that nobody has reported. EFTA 02642274. How do savants know things they never learn? My explanation is genetic memory, the genetic transmission of knowledge. Genetic memory, the idea that knowledge, consciousness itself, can be passed through DNA, not taught or learned, inherited. If that's true, then consciousness isn't just software running on the brain. It's encoded in the genes. And if it's in the genes, you can breed for it, edit for it, select for it. Part 1 was genetics. This is consciousness. And Epstein believed they were the same thing. Chopra's response to this email makes it even darker. In the same thread, same EFTA, Chopra pushes back with a detail that changes everything. He tells Epstein about an acquired savant with an entirely different skill post-injury. Acquired savants. People who suffer brain injuries, car accidents, strokes, trauma, and wake up with abilities they never had before. Perfect musical pitch, calendar calculation, photographic memory, skills that appear from nowhere after the brain is damaged. If trauma can unlock abilities that were always encoded in the brain, abilities you never learned, abilities that might come from genetic memory, then Epstein's experiments on women take on a different dimension. Was he testing whether psychological trauma could trigger altered states of consciousness? Whether breaking someone's normal awareness could unlock something underneath? I mean, he was measuring belief thresholds with 200 women. He was funding research on savant telepathy in children with neurological differences. And now Chopra is telling him that brain damage creates savants? What if the trauma wasn't a side effect of the research, but actually a variable? Deepak Chopra was pushing the same idea, but from the other direction. Chopra's book, Super Genes, argues that the evolution of species is the evolution of consciousness. That genes don't just build bodies, they build awareness. EFTA 02045681. Epstein and Chopra visiting the alchemist kitchen together, an apothecary in Manhattan. Plant medicine, consciousness expansion, alchemy, they were practicing this kind of stuff. And then there's this conference, EFTA 02397964, a session titled Gene Editing in Consciousness. Whoa, a conference on gene editing in consciousness connected to Epstein's network. That's the bridge. The genetics program from part 1 and the consciousness program from part 3 meet in one room. And the thesis is, edit the genes, edit the mind. But let's talk about this Dmitry Itskov. Russian tech billionaire, founder of the 2045 initiative, and his public mission is to achieve human immortality through mind uploading by the year 2045. EFTA 02078308, May 2015. Itskov and Gino Yu, Epstein's consciousness recruiter, are arranging to meet in New York. They already know each other, both in Epstein's orbit, the mind-uploading billionaire and the consciousness stage mapper connecting through Epstein. The same month, Epstein writes to Itskov, "I spent the weekend with Chomsky at my house. Great, strong views, but clever." Noam Chomsky, the most cited intellectual of the 20th century, and in the same thread, Itskov mentions meeting a Buddhist monk who works for MIT and is interested in AI. We discussed possible AI self-awareness. Then, Epstein sends Itskov a link to Rupert Sheldrake's online telepathy test. So Jeffrey Epstein sends the mind-uploading billionaire a telepathy experiment? Sheldrake's morphic resonance, the idea that consciousness extends beyond the brain, that minds can connect at a distance. This is another bridge. Mind uploading meets telepathy meets AI self-awareness meets genetic memory in one email chain. In part 2, I showed you the occult library. Now you might have thought that that was separate from the science, but it's not. Epstein didn't see a difference. To him, Newton was an alchemist and a physicist. Consciousness was a genetic trait and a mystical state. The soul was dark matter and something you could upload. Okay, but everything that I've shown you so far, the brain mappers, the AI theorists, the VR rigs, the cryonics evaluations, all of it sounds like cutting edge research, and you maybe could argue that it's noble. But now let me show you who the test subjects were. EFTA 024028848. David Savage asked Epstein, "You did an experiment with 200 girls where you held their hands and rating them?" And Epstein responds, "I did this with 200 girls. Each one had to rate the accuracy of diagnosis on a scale of 1 to 10. The written diagnosis was exactly the same for each." What? 200 girls, given the same fake reading, and he's measuring how many of them believed it. EFTA 024-53747. Then Epstein designs another round for Savage. 10 women, you will need to touch each one. And his takeaway from all of this? Believing is more fun. But he's not debunking anything. He was measuring who could be made to believe and how fast. 200 women, the same fake reading, and scoring their conviction. But why touch? Well, because a neuroscientist told him that it works. EFTA 021-92305. Peter Fenwick, the same man running the Cosmic Consciousness program, tells Epstein that touch activates their hormonal system and that dominance hierarchy matters. So the science wasn't separate from the exploitation. Okay, but the women knew. Listen to what they wrote. EFTA 027-21399. A woman writes to Epstein, "You described me as a failed experiment. I didn't know that I was a part of one. Am I an unsuspecting Galatea or a pawn in your dealings with Leon? Am I an unsuspecting Galatea? Galatea from Greek mythology. Pygmalion sculpts the perfect woman and brings her to life. So this woman is asking Epstein, am I one of your unsuspecting creations that you sculpted and brought to life?" EFTA 018-62162. Another email about a different woman. Quote, "For me, it's a great experiment. Taking a girl who hadn't been with a guy until she was 23 and then getting her to this point. She is sufficiently confused, and I think you can get some mileage out of this." What? She is sufficiently confused, you can get some mileage. A great experiment. Now, with this context, he's using the same word for the woman that he used for the consciousness research. Experiment. We have to consider whether they were a part of the same program. These spiritual practices and ideas weren't separate from the exploitation. They were the same delivery mechanism. EFTA 017436615. A message about Kundalini yoga class. Mimi at class 930. So many hot girls promise. Abundant at a Kundalini class. And then there are the meeting notes. EFTA 020-45779. Action items from Epstein's meeting. Design fun experiments, e.g. mice on DMT and environmental medicine meme. Mice on DMT? That was the brainstorming idea at Epstein's meeting? Design a fun experiment, psychedelics on animals, and create a meme around environmental medicine. So that's the brand for their research? EFTA 022714445, January 2019, 6 months before his arrest. Gino Yu writes to Epstein, "I will also have a shaman with me, as well as a psychonaut that grows his own mushrooms." A shaman and a mushroom grower traveling with the consciousness recruiter coordinated in the same email chain as Yushabat. EFTA 02676253. We talked about this in part 2. Sacred Space, New York. An invoice to Epstein. 50 digital urban detox solution massage rituals. Digital? At $200 each? Total $10,000. Pre-purchased in bulk through JP Morgan Chase. Massage rituals, digital urban detox. It's basically consciousness language wrapped around a $10,000 massage invoice. EFTA 020-45162, August 2016. Bebe Avdio, an assistant working out of Darren Indike's law office, confirms to Epstein 4 girls in total, and they are all 17. 2016, post-conviction, after the plea deal, after the sex offender registration. 4 girls, all 17, confirmed from the lawyer's office. But the reason I bring this up is because the consciousness experiments, the brain mapping, the VR rigs, the meditation apps, the enlightenment programs, all of this was running at the same time as this. EFTA 000-37181, a girl tried to swim off the island. The bodyguard confirmed it. She tried to swim. In his assessment, her attempt showed no greater level of distress than he'd seen in other girls throughout the years. So he's seen this before. Other girls trying to escape the island. And the bodyguard himself told investigators he was frightened by Epstein. Apparently all the workers signed million-dollar NDAs and they're petrified to talk. So 5 stages. Map the consciousness. Gino Yu, Fenwick, Radin, Martin, Chopra. Understand what it is. Then, model the brain. Yosha Bach, Ed Boyden, Sebastian Sung. Describe it mathematically. Then, preserve the brain. Neck tone, Alcor, cryonics. Keep it after death. Next, you build a new body. George Church, David Hansen, Genie Lab, directed evolution. Create a vessel. Then, the transfer. The mind reader device. Read the mind, clone the body, upload. And at every single stage, the research ran in parallel with this exploitation. The brain scanner was in the same house as the trafficking. The consciousness researcher and the massage therapist used the same vocabulary. The experiment was a scientific term and a word for woman. So we have to question whether he separated the two. And look, you might think this is crazy, you might think this is all nonsense. But here's the thing. This technology is happening right now. Everyone knows Elon is building the brain chip. And it would seem that their excuse is obviously to help the disabled. But listen to what he told shareholders. He thinks uploading a mind into a robot body is less than 20 years away. You think they're gonna tell us the truth? And then there's an EFTA in the archive where someone in Epstein's circle writes, end quote, very intrigued by Neuralink. I wonder if there's a connection. But get this, remember how I told you to take a note earlier? Just last week, Meta was granted a patent. And the actual patent is for training an AI on everything you've ever posted, every comment, every DM, every voice message, so that it can simulate you after you die. The AI takes over your account. Epstein was funding the research, and now the tech companies are filing the patents. And let's finish off with this document. Epstein writing about someone who died. Socrates proves the immortality of the soul. I see her soul, very young, full of energy, getting ready to leave. I see people surrounded by their soul. So he believed in the soul. He obviously was spiritual to a certain degree. He believed he could survive the body. And he spent millions of dollars and over a decade trying to prove it. Whether he succeeded or not isn't the point. The point is the pipeline existed, the funding existed, the scientists existed, and the test subjects existed. All the documents have EFTA numbers and you can verify them for yourself. Part 1 was what Epstein was building. The genetics, the baby farms, the egg doctor. Part 2 was the secret societies, the occult, and the control system. Part 3 is the consciousness pipeline, mapping it, modeling it, preserving it, and building new bodies for it. But we're not done. There's more in these documents that still has not been shown yet. Make sure you like and subscribe so you don't miss part 4. And keep dropping those EFTA numbers in the comments. I really appreciate all the help. Thanks for watching, and all we can hope is that our minds may be unveiled.